Desert. All right, some thoughts on this one, and I do want to also relate it back to some thoughts on the weekend as well. But the Giants find themselves in this particular point in time now with Blake Snell's injury and already running through the rotation here, having to use the bullpen games like they did tonight, like they did in their last win going back to last Tuesday. So Eric Miller gets the start as the opener. He was set to give way to Spencer Howard. Spencer Howard comes in after Miller got through that first inning jam thanks to the double play. Christian Walker bouncing into a pair there, and Spencer Howard looked like this thing could get pretty ugly pretty quick as Howard, the hanging slider, as Gurriel greeted him with the home run. Howard was really up in the zone, a lot of good contact against him. Blaze Alexander with a line drive single to drive in the second run, and it was 2-0 there in the second, and with the Giants really having some of the issues as far as having enough starting pitching and all of that, while also trying to stop this losing streak. You thought, oh, this is big trouble, but Howard got it together and would end up in this game pitching pretty well overall. 4 2/3 innings. He gives up just those 2 runs and 4 hits. He did strike out 3, and then you've got Sean Jelly in the game and Tyler Rogers doing his thing to help give the Giants a chance to win this one. Key moments as far as the hitting for the Giants goes. Wisely continues to be hot as he picked up a couple of hits. Matt Chapman continues to be somebody that's getting hits and driving in runs here for these last couple of weeks. A 2-for-4 night for Chapman. Elliot Ramos, the big home run in the 7th to tie the game up. A mammoth shot there just to the right of dead center field. Ties the game, a 420-foot blast to tie the game at 2. Talked about Tyler Rogers coming in as the Giants. A lot of good defensive plays from the Diamondbacks in this game to help keep the Giants off the board. Turned in double plays, diving catches in the outfield, and double play on what was the first of a couple of nice plays in the last inning from Christian Walker. The 3-6 double play Brooks grounded into, and Walker tagging the bag and then throwing to the shortstop covering second for a tag play there to help Nelson, who went all the way, Ryan Nelson, into the 8th inning. And the Giants, with some decent contact against him at points, but again, it was snuffed out a lot by quality defensive play from the Arizona Diamondbacks. But all in all, 2 runs not enough for going down to Arizona against a pitcher who had struggled at home in the early going this season. And the game goes to the 9th. Looked like the Giants were going to get an opportunity to take the lead there. Matt Chapman with the infield hit. Conforto strikes out. Ramos with the single. And it was in a weird spot. Hard hit ball into the outfield. Weird spot. Chapman, as the ball kind of rolled away and the outfielders had to go get it. It was really in between the left fielder and the center fielder. And you had the feeling that if there was any kind of bobble at all, Matt Williams was going to send Matt Chapman, and Matt Williams ended up holding up Matt Chapman on that play. And Solair then, of course, was left as the guy that had to get the hit that the Giants needed, and he hit the chopper to third. And Christian Walker, bang play on the tag, initially ruled safe. D-backs challenge it upon review. Call quickly overturned. Walker got the tag down just a split second, fraction of a second before Solair was able to get his foot on the bag. And so you go bottom 9th. That means Randy Rodriguez is in instead of Camilo Doval. And McCarthy with the 1-out bloop double down the left field line. And Pavin Smith, the pinch hitter for Arizona, walks it off with the 2-run shot. And the Diamondbacks win this thing by a final of 4-2. So consecutive difficult losses for the Giants, and now this team finds itself right back in many ways banged up, a little short in the rotation, still trying to get enough of their regular hitters back in the lineup to balance with some of the younger players who have come up and been able to make a positive impact on things here over these last couple of weeks. But now they find themselves essentially right back where they were a couple of weeks ago, about halfway between, right? They got to the point where they were 6 under against the Dodgers in the middle of that May series, and then, worked their way all the way back up to 2 over 500. And now the dip is back. Now, the good news is you're still only I think a half game out of the wild card, believe it or not, that final wild card. But you're in this glut of mediocrity that I mention every time I'm on. Yeah, 2 under right now, 29 and 31, the Cubs in the final wild card spot. So you don't even need to be a 500 team to get in and be a wild card team. The Giants are 29 and 32 and only a half game out, only a half game back of the Cubs right now as far as that final wild card spot. So it's ugly stuff. Tonight, another tough loss that sends the Giants reeling when it looked like maybe they had an opportunity to be able to, get themselves back on track in this thing and use some of the momentum from all of the comebacks. It does feel like some of the crazy wins that they pulled off. I know there were a couple of bullpen losses mixed in there on that last road trip with the games in Pittsburgh and New York, but you look at it, and, you want that to be a springboard, and now all of a sudden you look at what could have been a decent homestand if they win yesterday. Doval blows up in the 9th inning. The Yankees are just so good, and we can get into that conversation as well because that was something else. Now when you look at this loss, chasing the loss that the Giants sustained last night, and, really getting the ballpark taken over, more than I can ever remember it being taken over. I think there were, even though I know they announced a sellout, an under 40,000 sellout, by the way, on Sunday, and then crowds in the mid 30s basically for Friday and Saturday. But I thought the percentage of Yankee fans that were there, especially the first games, but I know the Juan Soto shot in the 9th inning and the angle with the first baseline and all the Yankee fans behind the Yankees dugout over at Oracle Park. I mean, it was jarring to see that. Their presence was felt all weekend, and then you've got Aaron Judge and Juan Soto just dominating. And it's interesting because an 808 KNBR to join the conversation, 415-808-5627. John Dickinson here on a Monday night here on the Sports Leader. There's the baseball reality standpoint and the nuts and bolts of everything. And, I usually like to start these shows and give a little quick, mini recap of the key points. Giants didn't, you got to score more than 2 runs at Chase Field against a pitcher that's really struggled for the Diamondbacks to pitch in his home ballpark. You'd like to think that you'd take the 2 runs in 4 2/3 innings from Spencer Howard on a night where the Giants are throwing a bullpen game. And even though it didn't start off well for him, he gave him a chance. And the pitchers that came in following that, Jelly and Tyler Rogers, gave the Giants a chance. It looked like they could have pushed a run across in the 9th. Tough bang-bang play on the overturn goes against him. And Randy Rodriguez ends up in the game in a tie game. Pavin Smith goes deep after a bloop double. Giants a little snake bit on the night with some excellent defense. I mean, you get credit for being a quality defensive team, and the Diamondbacks made a bunch of plays, as I mentioned. So there's the baseball component. There's the not enough hitting tonight. Bullpen gives up a bomb in the 9th inning. You lose to not only a division rival, but a team that you're battling with in this glut of mediocrity, at least for the time being, as far as the National League wildcard race goes, and the fact that there's really 4 or 5 good teams tops in the National League. I think 4 at this point, and basically there's 2 spots for about 7 or 8 teams as far as shaking it all out. So there's the practical. Hey, the Giants lost. They're banged up right now. They're trying to get hitters back. They're figuring out the rotation. Blake Snell's been, I think, an unmitigated disaster at this point with the late start and not being able to take the ball. until basically, a couple of weeks into the season, and then he's injured, and then he comes back and doesn't look good, and then he's injured again, and now it's almost like, well, we'll probably see you in July, or at least toward the back end of June. At this particular point, as he went to the injured list earlier today. But there's the practical part of it, and then and that you can look at and say, okay, the Giants are a mediocre team that's trying to hang on for dear life until they can figure out who their 26 best players are to give them a chance to try and make another push like the one we saw them make a couple of weeks ago. There's that part of it, and we can get into that. And the fact that they're still only a half game out, as mediocre as it looks and has looked really for the most part other than the last couple of weeks. And then there's the big picture standpoint. Of where the Giants are at and getting swept over the weekend against the Yankees, who clearly, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand the fact that the Yankees are completely in a different class than the Giants are at this point. The Giants entered this season basically with the goal of being a wild card because they're not in the class of the Dodgers in their own division and the Phillies and probably the Braves and certainly the Yankees given the way that they've played to begin this season. But there's all of the Giants' failures kind of wrapped in one over this weekend, and Aaron Judge dominating and Juan Soto dominating, and then the debate over whether a game like yesterday means more than a game like today, and just the optics. Because there's a baseball standpoint and then there's an optics standpoint. And from the baseball standpoint, it doesn't look great right now for the Giants, but they're also not getting buried. Then there's the overall optics standpoint of this team just looks mediocre. And it was a rough weekend where the ballpark got taken over. They showed how far away they are from being among the best teams in the major leagues. And all you got to do is look at their record against not only the Yankees with the 0-3, but the Dodgers. They're 1-5 against the Dodgers. It's 1-12 before that most recent Philly. They're 3-13 against the Dodgers, against the Yankees, and against the Phillies to this point on the season. Now, an optimist might say, hey, that means they're decent against everybody else, and they're going to play a whole hell of a lot of everybody else between now and the end of the season. And maybe that ultimately comes to fruition, but I can just get, Giants fans' frustration in a big-time way as you look at not only the way this game plays out, but just the way the weekend played out for San Francisco as they do give up a little bit of that momentum that they had started to get rolling with all of the comeback wins and even winning the first two games in kind of miraculous fashion. That second one with the bullpen game almost did the trick again in this game tonight in Arizona. Second turn for a lot of those pitchers, Spencer Howard among them. So 808 KNBR, if you want to weigh in on that, let's get it rolling with Nathan in Castroville here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Nathan. Nathan, are you there?
I'm here. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right tonight, Nathan. Another tough loss on top of a tough loss on top of a brutal weekend. But what's on your mind?
Man, I'm honestly, I'm so confused. Everything looked good on paper. We got Solair, and everybody's like, oh, a guy that can hit 30 home runs. Okay. Oh, Blake Snell. This sucks. Like, in all reality, it does suck. We play the Dodgers, and we know how that's going to go. It doesn't go good. And then, you know what? We play the Phillies at home, and it's like, hey, you know what? They're scrappy with the Mets. Like, okay, look, like, let's go. This team has something. And then you play the Yankees. And then you have, the hometown kid, Aaron Judge, talking about, oh, croup and kite in my backyard. And we just get washed by those guys. And it's frustrating because it's like 2 steps forward for the Giants, 10 steps back. And it's, I had to wait till my 1-year-old daughter fell asleep. I had to put her to bed a couple minutes ago to come on here. But, oh, my God, like, what is going on? and I don't see it getting better. I really don't. And what makes me upset is, they talk about Juan Soto. The Giants can offer Juan Soto $750 million. Do you really think he's coming to the Giants? No, sir. It's not going to happen. It's not. It isn't. And I don't know how it can get better. But, man, this is frustrating. It really is. The guy that I talked to before I came on here, the screen guy, he was like, ultimate D-punch. That's like the best description that I've ever gotten by calling KNBR. Like, that's how it is. It's like the ultimate high when we – the Mets are trash, but, coming back.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Mets aren't good. The Pirates aren't good. I mean, this team, they did win the first couple of games against the Phillies, but other than that, they've got the one win against the Dodgers. The Yankees, I thought, toyed with them a little bit. They jump right on Logan Webb. Then Logan Webb keeps him in the game. It's a 4-3 game. You're thinking, hey, the Giants have been playing well. They might steal it. Nope, then the Yankees add on. That game's done. Then you're thinking Sunday, hey, the Giants might get this one. Blake Snell was pretty good, although right at the moment that Blake Snell starts to look like, hey, all right, is he going to string together 3 months of looking pretty good? And he wasn't great on Sunday, but it was clearly his best start and something to build off of with some tangible results. At least he was 1 out away from some tangible results. And then now he's injured. And it's like we'll see him who knows when, at least a couple of weeks at this point, if not, closer to a month if you look at the similarity to the time that he missed, last time with the same injury. And then the Yankees beat your closer. So they beat your Cy Young candidate by jumping him 4-0, and then they beat your supposed elite closer in the 9th inning from a couple of runs down and just steal your soul when it all felt like maybe they had an opportunity to just, survive and advance back into this glut of playing a lot more mediocre teams.
Apparently, they offered Duvall like a $50 million extension, and then when they say that, look what happens. I think this season, to be honest, I don't really believe in curses. But, man, I mean, Jung-Hoo Lee, gone, hurt. And then Solair came back, and then he hits a foul ball that hits the top of the batting cage and hits him in the dome during batting practice. I think it's cursed, to be honest. And it hurts me to say that because I love this team. I really do. I love this franchise. When they won the World Series, nobody thought they would do it. And they basically said, shove it to everybody else. But, man. This is hard.
No doubt, Nathan. And everybody wanted him to spend money. And thank you for the call, Nathan. We appreciate it. We got some other people that want to chime in. 808 KNBR is the number, 415-808-5627. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. I also want to give my guy Jacob Violante a nod here. Jacob, once you crack the mic, you can say things like what you said to Nathan when it's not actually going over the air, brother. But I do want to give you a nod and bring you on here a little bit because there's been a couple of tough ones for the Giants here these last 2 days.
It's been tough, man, and there's always that age-old comparison. Is losing like this worse than just getting just your ass kicked 7-0? You know what I mean? At least this one was competitive. They had it the Solair missed the tag on his head as he was going to first. Looks like you're about to go ahead with a Chapman coming around. And it was just, man, from penthouse to outhouse, you know what I mean? And it's tough out here for Giants fans and for the team. They're struggling.
Well, and the other part of it is everybody wanted the Giants to spend to the best of their ability, right? You couldn't get Aaron Judge. You weren't going to get Ohtani. A lot of the big boys weren't going to, Yamamoto. A lot of the heavy hitters and pitchers, for that matter, were not going to come. But you want the Giants to spend, and they spend. And the problem is, for the most part, the guys that they've spent on either are unproductive or have gotten hurt to this point. And so you don't know what they could have been or have been, and Chapman started off pretty badly, and he's come around to be much more productive here over the last few weeks. But Solair, you felt like something maybe was finally going to go right on that high chopper for Solair to be able to put himself in position to, even on an infield hit or an error, bring in the game-winning run. Obviously, if it's an error, it wouldn't have been an RBI, but potentially get the RBI that gives the Giants a big win to get the nasty taste out of their mouth from yesterday. And then, nope, Christian Walker tagged him. Overturned. Nope, can't. Not happening. So, no, I get all that frustration, and I just get the frustration from you wanted them to spend, they spent, and then the guys they spent on, to this point, for the most part, it just hasn't worked out for one reason or another. And it leads me down the path of just kind of wondering, what if they did get Juan Soto? Would Juan Soto come here and hit 250 with 18 home runs? And I mean, now that's a thought I've had. Is like, because everybody seems, when they come here, that's not like a bargain basement, type of a signing. That's not a Lamont Wade or a Tyro Estrada find, and I know those guys were both Farhan find type of a trades, but it's the guys that aren't, isn't a lot expected. Wilmer Flores, decent player, not a big time contract. Oh, he comes in, he's productive for a couple of years, for the Giants. It just, those are the guys that they've hit on. But anybody they've really tried, from Haniger to even Conforto, who, last year wasn't good enough to where he opted in to come back. Jock Peterson even, they had to give $18 million to get him to come back for last year. Whatever they've chosen to do, it just hasn't worked. And it's left him in this position where you end up frustrated. You end up wondering how it's going to change. That's the big picture, though. We've already had somebody on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line, 707. Do you anticipate a white flag sell-off at the deadline if this streak continues? Well, here's the reality. It's probably not going to continue to the point where they're clear-cut out of it. And we'll get back to more calls here coming up in just a second. 808 KNBR. We got a few people. Looks like we got one line open, but we do have some people we want to get to, so we're going to just start running through the phone calls here at 808 KNBR. They're only a half game out of the wild card. So if they stay within, let's say, 3 games of the wild card, 3-4 games of the wild card, then no, I don't think they're going to sell at this point. I think they're going to try to look to potentially, add and get in.
JD, can I say something real quick?
Sure. Jump in, my man.
Thank God it wasn't Jock Peterson who hit that 2-run jack.
Oh, yeah.
It was some guy named Pavin Smith, because I would have lost my mind if it was Jock Peterson, and I guarantee you every single Giants fan would as well.
No question. Yeah, I was thinking the only thing that would have made it worse would have been if they had gone ahead 3-2. And then Smith had hit the home run, but then I also thought, well, Duvall would have been in the game had they gone ahead and not Randy Rodriguez, so maybe Smith doesn't take Duvall deep, but we just saw Duvall get taken deep yesterday, and the Giants lose a game in the ninth inning. So that was going to be a potentially tricky bounce back type of a game for Duvall. 808 KNBR. Let's keep it moving on the phone lines. Appreciate everybody who's chiming in. Mike in San Francisco is next here on The Sports Leader. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how's it going, JD? I want to empathize with the first caller, Nathan, and just send out a little hope into the universe tonight. First, I got a few things to run through, but Sean Jelly is, I believe, ready to start. And I just think he saves our bullpen arms at the least. So I'd love to see him start. And I got a little rant. So we nearly lead the league in double plays, and so many teams come from behind on us. We have the speed up now with the youth. And we actually put our first hit and run on tonight this season, and I really did enjoy seeing Wisely hitting first and Ramos hitting fifth, and the veterans take a step back for that to happen. But we haven't bunted in any bunt situations this year, and the coaching, the man is actually not coaching the middle of the baseball game to the basics of bunt, steal, hit and run. And if you put up 4 for Judge, why don't you put up 4 for a 20-year-old who's out there tonight to get a double play forced? I had to spill a little bit on you there. And I think the reality of it all is we've got to trade for an all-star because we deserve one, or a star because we deserve one here. And honestly, we all know no one's actually going to come here and sign. So our best bet is to get them here now with these young guys and sort of fill in the void. And I'm not talking about anybody who's already here or anything, but thanks, JD. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, man. I've been taking notes. I wanted to give you some room there. Appreciate it. 808 KNBR, the number. Thank you very much for the call here. Mike, look, nobody really bunts anymore unless it's an obvious situation. Like, nobody bunts to take a 3-2 lead in the 5th inning anymore. Like, that doesn't. Now, you might do it in the 10th inning. You might do it if you're the home team and you've got a tie game because the visitors didn't cash their automatic runner in, and you get your automatic runner on second and there's nobody out. You want to bunt him to third with 1 out and force the opposition to maybe load the bases or force a matchup in your favor. But teams just don't do it. Everybody's playing for the big inning now. Everybody's playing to try and hit the ball out of the ballpark to the best of the ability. And so, I think all of that is the kind of thing where, teams just don't do it. As far as the lineup changes and, Melvin will ride the hot hand. Like if young guys are hot and veteran guys are struggling, he'll move the younger guys up. He did that with Wisely. Bailey hitting second is a part of that. I mean, Bailey was hitting down 7-8 at the beginning of the season, and he slowly moved up to 5th and 4th and now second. And Ramos is hitting better than Solair and Yastrzemski at this point. And I'll tell you, if Casey Schmidt keeps hitting the ball hard, as he did tonight, a couple of those quality defensive plays by the Diamondbacks were Casey Schmidt balls. I mean, he ended up 1 for 3 on the night, but there were 2 real good plays by the Arizona defense to get him for the 2 outs in this one in the 3rd inning, and also going back to the 5th inning. So, Casey Schmidt keeps hitting it hard, keeps producing as he did over the weekend, and he may find himself moved up a little bit in the lineup here moving forward. So Melvin's not afraid to play the hot hand. As far as trading for a star, that is the one way that you can get somebody, because free agency has proven that you can't just go buy a player. The problem with that is you have to have young prospects that other teams covet. And that's where the development or lack of development in the minor leagues really, really, really hurts the Giants. It's because you need to have enough prospects to go get a star, in the offseason or at a trade deadline. And it's a tough position for the Giants to be in, because I think if they had those prospects through the years, a few of those guys would be on the team right now, and maybe the Giants would be in a position where they would have had their own star come up and be able to develop. So, I mean, at this point, bigger picture, yes, I think that would be, and that is what you have to do if you're the kind of organization that can't develop your own, but you have to develop enough prospects that you can at least ship out and be able to try and acquire somebody. Gary in San Ramon next year on the Sports Leader. Hey, Gary.
Hey, JD. Yeah, the last caller basically was talking about the points that I was trying to make, and you answered the question about bunting. I thought it was a good opportunity, especially with Brooks at the bottom of that lineup after Casey Schmidt got a hit and Brooks, batting 111. And I thought there was a good opportunity for him to maybe lay one down. But like you said, not doing it. But I say let's do it with the anemic offense that we have. We've got to be doing a little more. I know we don't have a lot of speed. I guess we did have a hit and run tonight. So I'm just a little disappointed in not using all the tools that are available in a baseball game. And I've watched Melvin over the years, and did same thing with the A's. He rarely bunted. Of course, he had a little bit more of a power hitting team there, and when he managed in Oakland. But anyway, just the other point I wanted to make is that the weekend series, we were throwing our best pitchers at the Yankees, and they managed to basically destroy them. Webb, after giving up the early bombs, basically settled down. But still, we threw our best relievers, and they hit everything. So 3-13 against the division leaders, that's less than mediocre. And but it's a long season. But kind of wanted to know what you think that Duvall's problems are. He's got his ERA is up to 4.6. Krukow was doing an analysis pregame about arm slotting. But what's your take on Duvall, JD?
Yeah, I think maybe he's gotten a little fastball happy a little bit. I don't think Duvall. I mean, he's had a couple of the weird one in Pittsburgh with the error by Luciano. I think if they turn that play or even just get one out and he gets out of that, we're talking about one blown save. For the season just yesterday, and yesterday was a great lineup that had some good at bats. I mean, the problem yesterday was not being able to get the bottom of the order, and then guys are on base, and you got to go back. I thought they had the double play with Trevino, the catcher. I mean, him beating that play out was a surprise in the moment, and then Volpe putting the ball in the gap there. That was the one where I was like, oh, this is trouble. But maybe not throwing the slider enough. If there's one thing I could maybe say, and I'll say this, Gary, as far as your point on the bunt, you brought up the situation where Schmidt led off the eighth inning with a single. That actually would be a spot where I think you could consider it. It's because that's the eighth inning of a tie game. You've got Brooks up there, who's been in the minors, and it's in the 9 spot, and Wisely and Bailey are the next two with Chapman, who have all been hot. So I think I'm going to give you that one, Gary. If there's a point to try to do it, that might have been the point. So I appreciate the call.
Thank you. Thanks, JD.
Yep, Chris in Richmond next on the Sports Leader. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how's it going? You basically just in different parts described my call, which is this is year 6 of Farhan, and there's this systemic failure, which is one of the reasons they can't sign players, free agents, is they're bad, they're mediocre. And it's not just that it's a bad hitter's ballpark. It's just why would you go to the Giants when you can go to the Phillies, Yankees, or even the Padres or Dodgers? Then what you also pointed out was the farm system. 6 years in, they don't have the talent to make the trades the Padres made for Soto, and that you can make. They haven't built up a farm system, so you can't get players that way. And then you've got the free agents they can sign who are willing to come, like Solair. I can't for the life of me understand why people think Solair is going to come around when every other year he hits 190. He hit 190 2 years ago. He hit like 199 4 years ago. So every other year he hits sub 200. So I don't know why people think this year is going to be different than the other years. And you get to Blake Snell, who's a five and dive guy, and you spend a fortune for him. So you don't even get top guys. You overpay for mediocre guys. You have no farm system, and the whole my dog's upset because I'm getting upset on the phone in the car, and it's just it's a systemic failure from top to bottom, and they do nothing well. They excel at nothing. That's my call. What do you have to say?
Yeah, they were supposed to be a team that could really pitch, and that has been the case at times, but with all the injuries and the inability to hold some leads, that hasn't totally come to fruition. But no, it really is a problem where you start to look at it from all of these different angles. And yeah, you have to prove that you're good to get these top free agents. That you have to. It's like I always use this example with the Warriors. Like Kevin Durant wouldn't have come to the Warriors if they had just been an okay team. Like if they had just been like a 44-38 team, he wouldn't have even considered it, because you look at what the Warriors had been over. No, the Warriors had already won a championship and been to another finals, and hell, broke the all-time wins record in a single season. And that, coupled with the fact that ultimately they lost in the finals in 2016, Durant became, the piece that put him over the top for the next couple of years. But if they had been, the We Believe team in 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, then Durant doesn't come. Even if the Warriors do have the cap space that few other did to be able to try and get him. He probably goes back to OKC, or he probably signs on the dotted line with somebody else. When you're a team that's trying, and a franchise that's trying to go from bad to good, you have to prove that you're good, especially when there's some of these other issues, some circumstantial, some fair, some unfair. A lot of players don't like hitting at Oracle Park, as beautiful a park as it is. There are players, fair or unfair, and that don't have the best view of the city. And we can argue that, back and forth and say whether it's right or it's wrong or it's fair. Regardless of any of that, it may very well be wrong, but there's enough players that believe it to where they're not coming. So it's an issue that you have to deal. Like, it can be dead wrong, but it's still an issue that you have to deal with. And so, that's another issue that I think comes into play as far as the ability or inability to sign players. And so you got to trade for them, but the only way you can trade for them is if you have high-end talent. And then the guys that they do sign because everybody wanted them to sign. Like, I can't envision a scenario where the Giants didn't sign Solair or Matt Chapman or Blake Snell when they had the opportunity to do so, because there would have been, anarchy among the Giants fan base had they not. I can't imagine them going into this season saying, "Hey, we're going to rebuild this thing. Hey, this is going to be there wouldn't even be the people going to the ballpark that are going to the ballpark to this point. And the Giants, I think, are averaging right around 35,000. So, that could be significantly worse. I think they're top. I think they're top 5 or 6 in the National League, and top 3rd in baseball in terms of overall attendance. So, that is a scenario where, you start telling people you're not, you're going into a rebuild, or you're not going to contend for a couple of years. And then you got to deal. Then people really, stop coming. It's tough. It really is. But and the thing that works against them is also the thing that works for them, right? If they end up within a couple of games of the playoffs here and in the race, even if they're mediocre, and fall off at the tail end and win somewhere in the high 70s. The question's going to become, is that going to be enough for management to potentially make a change? And so I think they're going to go for it. I think Farhan knows he has to go for it. I think Farhan knows he has to keep trying to add logs to the fire to try and get this team over the top to at least get, especially if that final spot is as mediocre looking as it is right now. To the 408's point, what would have to happen? As I answer this on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line, what would have to happen for the Farhan experiment to end? I think they probably got to be be a 75, 76 win team, and have the final wildcard team win 83 or something again, and you end up 5-6 games behind that. So but again, at this point, I think they just have to figure out the combination of their best players, keeping the young guys, figuring out the veteran players that are performing well enough to be in the lineup every day, and just kind of go from there. 808 KNBR is the number. 415-808-5627. Stroke in Oakland is next on the Sports Leader. Hey, Stroke.
Hey, how you doing, man? Hey, just real quickly, I'm an old school guy. I would love to see them bunt, but you get a free runner on second in the 10th inning and people don't bunt with no outs. So I'm over the bunting. You're right. They just don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's a loss. I think they don't bunt probably because they can't. You know what I mean?
Well, it's become so de-emphasized that fewer and fewer players are good at it, because you're always trying to get on base, or you're trying to drive the ball, or you're trying to hit a home run. And even guys that would be 7-8 hitters in the lineup a lot of the time came up in the minor leagues trying to hit home runs, because you want, I mean, teams just want deep lineups with, I mean, you want your 7-8 hitter in a perfect world to be able to hit 15 home runs, right? So a lot of those guys are doing the same things that the power hitters are doing in terms of launch angles and being selective with the pitches they swing at and all of that. You're right. Even the visiting teams surely don't in the 10th inning when you get the sometimes the home teams do if they only need the one run, but it's usually in that situation where it's tie game. You get the free runner. You're the home team. You can bunt them over and then try to get them in. Boom, boom. If you're able to keep the automatic runner from scoring in the top half of the inning.
Yeah, as far as the team goes, can you? I mean, since the middle of the pack is the wild card, I don't see any of those teams except for the Braves that are so much better than the Giants. Can they rebuild and still maybe be in the mix? I think that'd be a good thing, because I like what I'm seeing from some of these young guys. And I'd hate to give some of them up for a guy, like you say, who doesn't want to be here or doesn't produce because the park's not, fit for his style of hitting. I would hate to see that, because I see a good vibe from some of these young guys right now.
Yeah, they've provided, I think, the best course, Stroke, and I've said this, I think the best course of action is to try to take the veterans that are performing and get them in there with the young. To me, it's just performance. Whoever's playing well, and I agree with you. I mean, Wisely's not going anywhere right now. Ramos is not going anywhere right now. We'll see on Schmidt. If he continues to hit the ball hard, he's been somebody who tends to come up and maybe he's hot at the beginning and then struggles. But Matos, they're going to have to make a decision on when Slater potentially comes back. But I don't see Fitzgerald going down. I think there's going to be opportunities for a lot of these young players to play, and they just kind of balance the roster to where who's hot is going to play, and you get a combination of the both, and you hope that the youthful energy and exuberance can drag the other guys forward, because I think that's what was happening over the 2-week stretch where they got hot here before these last 5 games.
Yeah, you're right. Hey, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Stroke. 808 KNBR is the number, 415-808-5627. It is John Dickinson here, our sports phone, KNBR, on a Monday night post-Giants game edition as the Giants lose to the Diamondbacks. 4-2 is the final, as they have lost their 5th consecutive game, now 29-32, as the Diamondbacks get the win. The walk-off homer from Pavin Smith in the bottom of the 9th inning off of Randy Rodriguez after the Giants had a shot. Looked like they initially did get the go-ahead run across the plate before the call was overturned on the chopper that Solair hit to third. Would have brought in Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman looked like maybe he was going to score on the Ramos single, but all goes for naught as Smith hits the home run. Elliot Ramos, he's somebody that's not going anywhere. The 420-foot home run in the 7th inning to tie the game. Brett Wisely, couple of hits in this one. He's not going anywhere. We'll see with Matos. We'll see with Schmidt. They need somebody to play shortstop. I know Nick Ahmed had a little bit of a setback over the last couple of days. I think Brooks is probably going down at some point. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. I know they maybe if Flores was hitting, you could potentially have, you could send Brooks down, and that could be your way to get Slater back on the roster, and then you're moving guys around. And I know I've said this a lot over the last week. I was filling in for Papa with John Lund, and it may become a scenario where Matos is playing some center field, and maybe Ramos is playing right field, and Yastrzemski's not in there because you want Conforto in left, or Conforto's not playing all the time, and Ramos plays left field there with Yastrzemski in right. And then, Solaire, who maybe looks like he might be coming around a little bit. But if he continues down the path that he's been on here in the early part of the season, then maybe he doesn't get all of the DH at bats on a night in, night out basis, and you can start working some other hitters in there, which opens up a spot. So I do think there's a way to do it and keep everybody on the roster for the time being until some more drastic decisions need to be made. All right, let's go ahead and pause here. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Another tough one for the Giants as they lose to the Diamondbacks 4-2. It is KNBR 104.5 and 680. San Francisco, the sports leader.
Phone KNBR keeps rolling live from the KNBR Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpot Studios. Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpots are here. Where are you? Just drop in. Please play responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER.
Runner at second, one out. Tie game, bottom nine. Now a swing and a high fly ball. Center field deep. Yastrzemski back at the wall. It is gone. Maybe it hit off the balcony and bounced back in, but Smith is rounding the bases, and he's going to come around and score. So whether it was a home run over the wall or stayed in the park, it's a walk-off no matter what. The Diamondbacks beat the Giants 4-2. The pinch hitter, Pavin Smith, after the bloop double. That was no bloop. He blasted that one to right center. And the Diamondbacks take game one of this series. They hand the Giants a fifth consecutive loss.
Tough one for the Giants on top of a tough one yesterday afternoon and a tough weekend at Oracle Park with the Yankees coming in and kind of putting the Giants in their place a little bit, although things definitely would have felt a lot different had the Giants been able to at least get the finale on Sunday afternoon when they had the lead and Camilo Doval on the mound. 2-run lead with Doval on the mound in that ninth inning. Couldn't stop the bleeding yesterday and then can't stop the bleeding in this one tonight despite the Elliot Ramos home run in the seventh inning. Brett Wisely and Matt Chapman continuing to stay hot. And Spencer Howard, after looking like it was going to be a very difficult evening for him, hanging slider to Gurriel on the first batter that he faced with Eric Miller being the opener and then Howard ended up coming in the second inning. But Howard pitches well in this game tonight. Gave him a chance, 4 2/3, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 strikeouts, and then Sean Jelly did the job. Tyler Rogers did the job as well to get through the 8th inning, but Randy Rodriguez, who had pitched really well, other than a little bit of mop-up in the game against the Phillies going back to the beginning of this losing streak last Wednesday. He gives up the home run after the bloop double in the call you hear there, right here on KNBR from Dave Fleming. 4-2 the final, 5 straight Giants losses. 808 KNBR, the number to join the conversation, 415-808-5627, the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open there. 602 chiming in. The elephant in the room is why not walk Pavin? Well, if you walk Pavin Smith, then you're going to face Corbin Carroll, who's with 1 out and the bottom of that order. And Corbin Carroll's been struggling mightily this season after the out-of-this-world beginning to his major league career, going back to last season. So, yeah, I mean, I guess, but you're going to need 2 outs no matter what. You set up a double play, but you're not getting Corbin Carroll to bang into a double play at that point. It's just a matter of, do you want to go against Corbin Carroll to get the second out? And then Blaze Alexander, had a couple of hits and a couple of nice defensive plays in the game tonight as well, including an infield hit. So, and then you're back to the top of the lineup. So I think it's a little more tricky when you look at, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you 2 outs and Ketel Marte's up, with a chance to win it with a 2-out knock. I think you definitely want to keep it away from him at that point in time. But, you do see plus, I think the other part of putting a guy on with Randy Rodriguez is Randy Rodriguez at times can lose the strike zone. And so if now there's a couple on and maybe you walk Carroll or Carroll gets an infield hit or something happens and the bases are loaded and all of a sudden you got to get a couple of guys out without walking a runner or a batter to end the game at that point. And so I think, you could also get Rodriguez out of the game at that point. But again, the Giants, I think, are in a position where they needed Randy Rodriguez to pitch that 9th inning and get through it. And tonight he was unable to do so. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627, as the Giants now fall to 29-32 on the season. And, tough one tonight, tough weekend for the Giants. The optics right now, it's funny how quickly things can go back to, I don't think the Giants were out of the woods when they were 2 over or they had won 13 out of 16 and all of that. But, they did have an opportunity to kind of hang on through the weekend and then get back to playing some teams that are struggling with a good chunk of some of the more difficult games on their schedule behind them. And, the inability to get the game yesterday to stop the bleeding, I think, becomes a bigger issue when you look at the way – sometimes you get a couple of games like this in a row, and a team might break a little bit, especially a team that's banged up and searching for a couple of slots in their rotation as far as who's going to be pitching. And so, every win to just stabilize and hold to 500 becomes important because the Giants got to 6 under. And then in a blink, they got hot with some late inning comebacks, won some other games mixed in there at home. And all of a sudden, they went from 6 under to a couple of games over, boom, like that. And now just as quickly, they've given a lot of that back, and now the uphill climb begins. But the uphill climb begins as this team is a little bit more shorthanded. And I think that's what gives a little bit of pause as to, you don't want to get back to 6 under and have to get red hot again just to get back to even, or have to, play great baseball for a month. The question last week, and John Lund was asking this, is doing the Papa and Lund show. Is this a team that's actually turning the corner, or is it a team that's just going through a little bit of a hot streak, going back to the stretch before this 5-game losing streak? Because every team, even some of the worst in baseball, do at different points in time get hot. And so, it becomes a question of which is it. And, they were showing some signs, I think, of something a little bit more sustainable because it was a different team that was out there getting the job done. It was Matos, and it was Ramos, and it was Wisely, and it was a little bit of Casey Schmidt before he got sent down early. A lot of those guys were the impactful players. It wasn't the same team that dipped to that 19-25 going back a few weeks back after the second game of that Dodger series. So it felt different because it felt like there was a better mix. Matt Chapman had gotten hot. But now it feels like, all right, this team, Lamont, they really are feeling Lamont Wade being gone. They need Conforto to get back and contribute. And the balance, it feels like the young players are still, for the most part, Wisely and Ramos are doing their thing. Matos has cooled off a little bit. He wasn't in there. I think he's going to be back in there the next couple of games. A couple of lefties going for the Diamondbacks tomorrow night and on Wednesday afternoon with Blake Walston and Jordan Montgomery. So I think Matos will be back in there, and you'll get a little bit more of a right-handed heavy lineup. You'll get Wilmer Flores back in there. Casey Schmidt's probably going to get a couple of opportunities to play more, and he's swung it pretty well. Jacob, I know you were telling me during the break you think Solair, and I agree with you, the last couple of days, yesterday the results were there in addition to the swings, but you were making the point during the break that you think his swings have been a little better. I think they have been as well. I think Solair, I don't want to say starting to come out of it, but it has, to the eye test, appeared to be improving off of what it was, where he just looked completely overmatched at the beginning of the season, and his timing was just off at every level.
Exactly. Like the line drives yesterday were awesome, and there was some contact today as well, and he's not letting these pitches right down the middle go, and he's not, waving at curveballs in the dirt. So I did like the last couple of days, and I think it's a little sign of hope, like we paying him a lot of money to hit home runs and stuff, but just the line drive singles are what really sparks the hope for me.
Well, and he's been up so many different times with runners in scoring position. You don't have to hit home runs in those scenarios. So you can, 3-run homers are great, and I think he was brought in to hit some 3-run homers, but 2-run singles are great too. 2-run singles will work. And he's been up, I think, more than anybody in positions where a 2-run single would be huge. And unfortunately, it's been lazy fly ball to center, or strike out swinging on a ball in the dirt, or ground ball to short into a double play, or into at least an out. And so, yeah, I think the contact has been better. I think the swings are a little bit better. And look, they need him to be, because he isn't going anywhere at this point in time. Bert in Hawaii is next on the phone lines. We get back to it here. 808 KNBR. Bert, you're on the Sports Leader.
Hey, hi. How are you guys doing?
Doing well.
Good talk show today. Hey, just a couple of thoughts. First of all, one of them is regarding Duvall. I mean, I've noticed, and this is over the years, that if he has too much rest, the day that he comes back, he's terrible. And I think Bob Melvin needs to watch that because Duvall had 5 days of rest. And when he came in against the Yankees, he was not sharp. He needs to, after 3 days, Duvall needs to go in no matter what the situation is. And again, you go back over time and you look at Duvall's stats. He's terrible after a lot of rest. So something to watch out for. And the other thought is just regarding Logan Webb. I mean, he's our best pitcher by far, Cy Young type pitcher. But, he's always, or he hasn't been a shutdown pitcher in big games. And take it for what it's worth, because against the Yankees, again, you were saying we were down 4-0. We had to come back. But, hey, against the Yankees, you got to shut them down and, give up no runs. Or even against the big games, we're always down when we're pitching, when Logan Webb's pitching in big games. And the only time he pitches real well is against the average teams. And, and then he does real well, and then we win those games. But, again, on the big games, he needs to, shut him down and hold him to basically zero is what the Giants need. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Good show, and I'll take you guys' comments off the air. Take care.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, look at we'll go Logan Webb first. I mean, you look at his worst games, and most of them have been on the road, but his worst games are at the Dodgers, at Boston. I know Boston's basically a 500 team, and I don't even think they've been great at home, but at that point in time, I think they were playing well at home, and Fenway is Fenway, and the Red Sox usually hit there. 3 2/3, 9 hits, 4 runs in that one. He gave up 5 3 2/3 at Dodger Stadium. 5 4 earned in 4 innings at Philadelphia and the Sunday Night Baseball game on Cinco de Mayo. And then the game against the Yankees, which was not a bad outing, not a quality start, allowing the 4 runs. But, yeah, they get down quick and can't overcome it. I was making the comment in the and look, the Giants have much bigger problems than Logan Webb. We've gone through them, and we're going to continue to go through them. But the reality is, if Logan Webb pitches like an ace against the Yankees, they might win that game 3-1. They might win, but he didn't. He pitched just a solid game, against the Yankees after a bad start and put him behind the 8 ball. And he would say as much. I mean, he was pretty frustrated by the fact that he allowed the Giants to fall behind in that game. The other problem the Giants have had just overall is they don't freaking score runs early in games. And that's the one thing that bodes, I think, as the most concerning moving forward, is you've got this team now that is back to being 3 games under 500, and they're trying to figure out the rotation, and they're trying to figure out the young and old mix, and they're trying to get some players back, and other players aren't coming back, and they're just trying to piece it all together, but they're 3 under. And you start looking at the run differential again, and I'm not a huge believer, but the run differential is minus 31, and it's basically the 5th worst, I think, in the National League right now, and a lot of those wins, and you can say, well, JD, they had games where they got leads and they've lost too many games where they've had leads. They've won some games where they've come back on the road on that trip. So maybe you could look at it and say it evens out. But the getting behind, and I know their hard hit rate was not indicative of a team that would have a record as good as their record was in May. I think they were 15-13 in May, and the way they hit the ball would be of that of a lesser team in May. And anytime I think you're getting behind in games, as much as the Giants are getting behind in games with the overall run differential they have, I think that doesn't bode well for the long haul of a major league season. I think that's something that says, oh man, like the wheels could at some point completely come off this thing. The other part of it is you can't have two spots in your rotation that are empty and need bullpen games. And the Giants have had to do it, I think, a lot more than they were planning on doing it at this point. But they're going to have to continue to do it unless they can figure out a primary starter. I know Mason Black's been lined up with Snell. He pitched yesterday in Sacramento. They got the bullpen slot tonight. Keaton Wynn might get that start, I think, in the Snell spot. It sounds like he didn't go down for a rehab appearance. I guess he's going to pitch in Arizona, and they're going to see if he's healthy, and he might end up being put back into the rotation in I guess, the Snell spot. And then they got to figure out what they're going to do in this spot that came up tonight after it came up last Tuesday when the Giants got the win in the lengthy bullpen game against Philadelphia. So they got to figure a couple. And Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb and those guys, again, those guys are down the line. Those guys are July at this point. So you got a month to get through. So, that would be the one thing that's concerning is, and again, I'll admit it plays both ways. And it's the simple fact of, they had some games where they got behind. A lot of times you get behind, you don't come back from 4 runs down like the Giants did, to a historic extent. And if, a couple of more of those games are losses and you're blowing games late, which we've seen them do, then you could have a real bad losing streak on the horizon. And at that point, then I think there's a lot of questions that are going to start having to be asked again. All right, 808 KNBR is the number if you want to continue the conversation. Jump in on that. 415-808-5627. We'll get to some more text messages. We'll also hear from Bob Melvin as the Giants lose in Arizona 4-2, the final right here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
It sound right, boy.
Dub Nation, dial the digits and dive in. 415-808-KNBR. Sports Phone KNBR continues right here and on the all-new KNBR app.
Elliot Ramos now. He swings to the first pitch, drives a fly ball deep right center field. Carroll on the move, going back at the track, looking up. It's gone! Elliot Ramos ties the game here in the 7th. A solo home run out to one of the deepest parts of the ballpark. Ramos homers for the second day in a row, and it's 2-2 here in Phoenix.
That was a big-time poke from Elliot Ramos. 420-foot shot just to the right of center field to tie the game up over the big wall. And for a righty to do that with a little oppo flavor to it, that's some massive power. Like, it's one thing for Pavin Smith to pull it a little bit and get it out there, and that was Smith's home run actually went, I guess, 4 or 5 feet more or longer than Ramos, but that was a big time poke. Elliot Ramos isn't going anywhere, and that's been hinted at over the last week by Farhan Zaidi that Ramos is ahead of Matos at this point, and I wanted to get, and we still have some time to get your phone calls, 808-KNBR, 415-808-5627, but I did get a tweet that came in, and I appreciate James in Sacramento for sending this, at JD John Dickinson on Twitter if you want to give me a follow, but he chimed in on Bailey. Says Bailey hasn't exactly looked like himself since coming off the concussion list. I think Bailey's been pretty good. I didn't want to touch on that as much as the second part of the tweet, which was big decision coming on Yastrzemski. Can't keep Ramos and Matos out of the lineup. I'm not so sure about that. And I think I think the next couple of days are going to be big for Luis Matos to see if he can find it again. He was very aggressive when he came up, and he was getting a lot of fastballs when he came up, and the league made the adjustment to more breaking stuff, and now he's got to be able to make the adjustment to bounce back and to be able to continue to produce. But yeah, Luis Matos is somebody that I don't want to say playing for a job, but it's not only Yastrzemski, but it's also Slater coming back. And Slater is going to get an opportunity to come back. He's been down in Sacramento on the rehab assignment. But it's, anytime you got to look balance in terms of righty and left and all of that. And so, yeah, Slater's going to be coming back at some point. I don't think Yastrzemski's necessarily going anywhere. They like his defense out there, and he was in center field tonight. I think what you're going to see is a little bit more, and I mentioned this in the last segment, I think you're going to see a little bit more of spreading out the time between Conforto and Yastrzemski. I think Conforto's basically going to be in there every day. I think Elliot Ramos is basically going to be in there every day. The problem there, though, is then you need a center fielder. And if Conforto's playing the field, Conforto's playing left and Ramos is basically playing right, then it becomes, is Yastrzemski out there? And if he is, he's got to be in center in that configuration, or Matos is going to be out there in center in that particular configuration. And maybe against lefties, they give Slater some at-bats as well. You just go with the all right-handed Ramos, Matos, Slater combination. left, center, right, or maybe Matos plays right and Slater plays center because Slater's obviously played a lot of center field. And then the decision, I think, at that point comes based on whether or not Slater can come back and whether he's productive or not. Like Slater's not just infinitely going to be on the team for the rest of the season, but he is going to get an opportunity to come back, and they are going to try to use him as a pinch hitter and use him as a platoon player that's going to hit against left-handed pitching and see if he can be a productive player in that setting. But I think this is actually a big week for Luis Matos to get back going the way that he was going, because I'm looking at, he did have a hit Sunday, but he had an 0 for Saturday, he had an 0 for Friday, he had an 0 for Wednesday, he had an 0 for Tuesday. Couple of hits in the Memorial Day Monday game, but he's really cooled off the last week. And here's the thing about young players. Young players often don't get the opportunity, especially on a team that's hell-bent on saying they're not in a rebuild, and that's where the Giants are. The Giants are not in a rebuild. At least not right now. And so with veteran players coming back, it becomes a scenario where young players have to keep hitting and keep producing. And the moment they don't, they get sent down. And so I think that's where Matos finds himself here over the last week. And I know a lot of people are probably saying, well, what, JD, what do you mean? I mean, 0 for 10, 0 for 4. He had an 0 for 14. He's 1 for his last 18. 1 for his last 18 over the last week. And the 1 came against the Yankees. I think he's going to be in there tomorrow. I think he's going to be in there Wednesday, as I mentioned, against a couple of lefties. But he's going to have to produce and get back on track. And that leads the Giants down the path of, looking to try to keep everybody. Because I think Brooks can go down. I think you probably need Flores to come to play first base more. I think Schmidt is making a case that, we'll see if Schmidt's. I think Schmidt and Brooks would be the two to go down at this point when you have to make a couple of moves. But yeah, Fitzgerald could be the backup shortstop. Although maybe Fitzgerald goes down and Schmidt continues to be the backup shortstop, and they keep rolling with Wisely and Schmidt a little bit. They got to get Tyro Estrada back and in the lineup. That will add a little bit of length to things, because it hasn't just been Wade, but they've also been without Estrada here for a couple of days. And, he's somebody that typically puts the ball in play, can hit the ball over the wall a little bit, can run some. Like, he's somebody that brings action into the fold. So they got to get Estrada back into the mix here, I think, sooner rather than later, and then try to get others rolling. 208. When Estrada gets back, wouldn't Wisely be in the mix in center? And I think Wisely's going to be playing short. As I just mentioned, I think he's not a prototypical shortstop, but especially with the little setback that Ahmed had, I think Estrada goes back and plays second. Wisely goes back and plays short. Maybe it's some kind of a platoon with him and Schmidt or him and Fitzgerald. But no, I don't think they're looking at it as – I know they're not. Because if he goes and plays center, then when's Yastrzemski going to play? And when's Matos going to play? And then so I don't think they're looking at it – I don't think they're looking at it as far as Wisely's going to go to center and then you're going to free up more at-bats for Schmidt or anything like that. I just think the young guys are going to have to stay hot to stay on the roster, because as much as I think there is a certain percentage of Giants fans that would like to say, I think it would be easier on them, Jacob. I think there would be a weight lifted in some ways. And correct me if I'm wrong, big Giants fan that you are. But I think there would be almost a relief from a lot of Giants fans if they were like, yeah, you know what, we're just going to play all the young guys and rebuild, and whatever happens, happens. And, like, there would be a relief, but at the same time, that's not good for the bottom line. But like this, of what it's been with disappointing signings and, gut punch losses and not being able to figure out the mix, I think in many ways this has been more painful.
It's definitely been hard, but you got to go all in for these playoffs. Even if you are a 500 team, like the goal is the playoffs. Even if it's the last wild card, even if it's just a glimmer of hope. You saw what the Diamondbacks did last year. They went through the Dodgers and swept them, being one of the last wild cards in there. And I get it where you're saying, like, we want to see the young guys, and the future hopefully looks bright. These guys, they need more time. They need more at-bats. They need more, plate appearances, whatever. But I want the playoffs. That postseason baseball, that feeling, the olden days of the 10, 12, 14. I need that, man. I need that.
This isn't that, though.
I know.
None of the and that's the part that I think, that's the part that I will say. And I understand. And look, they're not doing that. They're going for it. Like, they're going for it because it is going to be basically 500 or a little bit better than 500, that last spot. So you're always going to be in it. I know I've said it every show that I've been on. You could be 8 under and basically 4 or 5 out because nobody's going to run away with that last spot. Hell, nobody may run away with the second to last spot as well. The issue that I have is, like, those 10, 12, and 14 teams, and I get that because this comes up a lot, and I don't want to come down your road necessarily, but getting in at 83 or 82 or whatever it is, like, that isn't 10, 12, and 4. Like, all those teams were so much better. They really were. Like, I get that sometimes it doesn't feel that way, or we revise history in that way, but it's like those teams were closer to Atlanta and Milwaukee, maybe not the Dodgers and Phillies, but Atlanta and Milwaukee, than being mediocre, a couple of games under this glut of whatever it is here at the back end of the National League with all these teams fighting. Here's the problem. And I heard Chris Mad Dog Russo, he was on with Tolbert and Copes, and I thought he said it beautifully. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said the problem with the Giants, and I agree with this, you're unique because you're a diehard, Jacob. And there's a lot of diehards in our building, and there's a lot of diehards in the Bay and in the city. I'm not putting the diehards down by any stretch. But the problem with the Giants is the masses are not going to be excited in August. And I'm saying I'm repeating what Russo said. They're not going to be excited in August to watch the Giants play the Diamondbacks to try and get to 82 and 80 and the last wild card in a bad National League. Like, that's not real. That's not a real pennant race. Like, and I'm not advocating to go the other way. I think it's still the best course of action. And for Farhan, it's the only course of action. Because if this team wins 75 games and can't be in the mix until the very end at a minimum, then he ain't going to be here. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. And I know we've diverted from that conversation the last couple of weeks because things had looked better. But the moment this team gets 3, 5, 6, 8 games under 500, if it gets to that point, that's going to be at the forefront of everybody's mind. So he can't risk that. So they're not going to do it. But I just don't see the last couple of years them being around 500 in the mix for one of these last spots. It's, to me, I'll let you speak to it, Jacob, but to me it's just not real. It's just not real.
It might be a pipe dream. Yeah, it might be so far in the past. But again, like, these young guys have to do it continuously as well. Like, I know that they want the extended run, but, like, Casey Schmidt, amazing game yesterday. Pretty good game today. Not terrible. Didn't really, I think he had a hard hit ball that got caught or something, like, in left field. But the defense is always there, so you kind of like he can be a player on this team for sure. Luis Matos, like you said, a little inconsistent. The 1 for 18, tough stretch. Ramos, I love what I'm seeing from him. I think, like you said, he is going to be a fixture in the lineup wherever he might be able to play.
He's the one that's definitely staying.
Yeah.
And Wisely for now too, but Ramos is more of a true prospect. Wisely is just, I think, he's more of like a Eric Sogard type than a true prospect to me. But he's performing, so he's staying.
Not a bad comp, actually. I haven't heard Eric Sogard's name in a while from across the bay.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of lefty, like, slap hitting second baseman, middle infielder types.
Yeah, a little gritty.
That also have a little bit of pop, like kind of have some sneaky pop, like little guys, but have some sneaky pop. I think Wisely's one. This may be. I know some of the. I hate the fact that me remembering this guy means I'm kind of an old head because I don't really feel like an old head. But he's a little Craig Counsell. He's a little Craig Counsell, the player, not the manager. That left-handed second base middle infielder, tough at bat type of a guy. So if he performs, they need middle infield help. They need shorts. If he performs and can play shortstop, hits and can play shortstop, then he's going to be here, period. The decision will be, I think, between Schmidt and Fitzgerald once some of these guys start coming back. And then it's going to be on the veteran guys, like Yastrzemski and Slater, basically to perform, to be able to keep their spot on the roster as things get deeper in the year. But for somebody to lose their spot on the roster, somebody else has to push them out. And yeah, I think Ramos is the one guy above everybody that's just gonna be here to stay. I think for sure. Let's sneak in Derek and San Mateo here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Derek.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing well tonight. Just hanging in there, trying to make some sense of another ninth inning loss here when it looked like maybe the Giants were turning the corner.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a diehard too, just like the other callers. Born and raised, San Francisco, love the Giants forever. But I'm going to be the realist, and I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but I kind of want to, like, pull everyone back to earth a little bit and just say, things like the Blake Snell thing, I was calling it even before this last start. I said, look, the trajectory is just so bad with what he's doing now. Like, it just sounds like one of those, starts where he's just going to have some sort of season-ending something. He's just not going to perform for us. And trust me, I wanted him. We signed him. I went to his first start. I was rooting for him. It just doesn't look good. I'm already just counting him out. And even as a diehard, I just think that, in the division that we're in with the Dodgers being as good as they're going to be for the next few years, I think that the Giants are just a team that, when you go and you watch them and it's just entertainment at this point. We're going to have the swings where, we won a couple games. We had that, was it a 5-game winning streak? And it was cool. Now there's this 4-game swing that it's bad and the bullpen's bad. If we have some good games, great. It's entertaining. But, guys, I don't think we're going to – when we get slapped by the Yankees 4 games in a row, like, we can't compete. I'm sorry. I'm a diehard. I love it. I love watching the guys, and it's fun to watch the kids come up. But I don't think we're really going to compete for, I don't know how many years. But, when we have some good wins and some good runs, it's fun. But, it's going to be tough sledding for the next few years. Sorry, Blake Snell. I love you, man, but I don't think – not this year. Not this year.
Well, the good news, I guess, or the bad news is he's going to opt in if it continues down this path. So maybe he'll have a great year next year, right, knowing that he's going to need it to get paid going forward beyond 2025. So maybe that ends up being an unintended consequence. I mean, that's the unfortunate reality on a few of these guys, that they haven't performed to the level that they would want to be able to opt out. So maybe the Giants end up with a better team or more depth because of that, next season.
I mean, that's a whole other conversation too. Like, I mean, the new sort of like opting in, opting out that the players can choose. I think Matt Chapman's on that too. Like, I'm not a big fan of that because there's no guarantees that it only just means that if they have a crappy season,
Like we're stuck with the crappy player for another year.
They stay if you don't want them. That's how it works.
Exactly. I don't like that.
No,
that's that. But that's business, I guess. But
it's business. It's also part of the reason you could get those guys to come in the first place because you're willing to do that.
True.
And if the Giants don't, another team does because all these guys were trying to make. Basically, it came down to make as much as they could for the 1 year and maybe 2, with the opportunity to, if they have a great year, go try to take a chance at getting a big contract, a longer-term contract somewhere. You could opt out and come back, but it would mean you got to pay. If Snell had a Cy Young year this year, he'd be willing to stay, but it would be 150, 200 million at that point if he did. At least until everybody waits him out like what happened last year.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes this year. I'm not holding my breath this year.
Thanks.
We'll see.
No, appreciate the call. Good call. Let's go ahead and pause here. We'll come back and we'll wrap things up. We're going to go till about 11 o'clock here. But, yeah, we do want to get a break in. We'll come back and some final thoughts here as it is. KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
smartphone. KNBR keeps rolling. Live from the KNBR Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpot Studios. Casino Matrix. Progressive Jackpots are here. Where are you? Just drop in. Please play responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER.
Now Chapman swings, lines one out to center, and it's going to sail over the head of Carroll. It'll roll to the bottom of the wall. Rounding third wisely, he'll score. Chapman to second, takes a big turn, but he'll slam on the brakes there. Cadet with an RBI double, and the Giants are on the board. Now trailing only 2-1.
Yeah, Matt Chapman trying to bring the Giants back tonight. Fourth inning. Doubles in wisely. And the Giants were on the board. Joe Rizzo there earlier here on KNBR as the Giants would tie it up in the seventh, but then lose in the bottom of the ninth as Pavin Smith with the two-run walk-off shot off of Randy Rodriguez after the bloop double from McCarthy there, just dumping one in down the left field line for a double, and then Pavin Smith hits it over the wall, and the Giants now have lost 5 in a row.
JD.
Final couple of minutes here. Yeah. Go ahead, Jacob.
I remember on the broadcast, Dave Fleming saying that Jake McCarthy hit that at 65 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Off the
bat. That was one of, if not the weakest hits of the night, but just perfectly played. It was like a tennis shot. Just dropping it right in where nobody could get to it, and keeping the inning alive for Pavin Smith, who takes Randy Rodriguez deep. We were talking about Matt Chapman's contract. Chapman, a $16 million salary this season. He had a $2 million signing bonus, so $18 million this season. And the agreement includes a $17 million player option for 2025 and a $2 million buyout. So if Chapman exercises the option to stay for $17 million, he also has the same thing for 2026. He can opt out between 25 and 26 at $18 million, the player option with a $3 million buyout. So Chapman controls the deal here, not only next year, but the following year. If he stays next year, he could even stay for a third year at that point, if he doesn't think he can find another big money deal elsewhere. I know, Jacob, you'd mentioned, we were kind of chit-chatting about it during the break. Like where's Chapman at? I don't think Chapman's at a point right now, better in the last few weeks, but I don't think he's at a point where he'd be opting out of the potential of $35 million for the next 2 years. Because I think that's how you have to look at it. If you opt out the first year, then you got to make sure you're taken care of not only for that year, meaning 2025, but also the following year. So you'd have to get a minimum of 35 over the next couple of years, if not a longer-term deal off of that. So at this point, there weren't a lot of people that wanted to pay Chapman a lot this offseason. I think he's, and it's certainly subject to change, but I think he's in opt-in mode at this point.
It makes sense. And, like you said, a little inconsistent. Started out pretty good and then had that rough stretch, and now he's looking, like he's on the ups again.
Better.
Yeah.
Yeah, they need him to be a leader.
Yeah.
They need him to be somebody that's, and I think, he has been, but you can't be the leader that's not producing at all. And he also has been a hot and cold hitter throughout the course of his career. I think his numbers kind of get to where they get to in the last couple of years. You look at some of them, and they aren't overly. He's streaky. Is the point that he's very streaky. So, at some point you're going to get another, I think, extreme hot streak from Matt Chapman. The thing that you're hoping doesn't happen if you're the Giants is that you get another prolonged cold streak like the one that he had really after the first week or so, really the first few days of the season. He just went ice cold. But I think, the overall production that we've seen here the last few weeks, I think if it can stay closer to that, then Matt Chapman's definitely the kind of player that the Giants want to have around, and the defense has been on point and all of that. But yeah, I mean, he hasn't even sniffed the levels of what they've received at this point from Jorge Soler and from Blake Snell. I mean, they're in different categories, I think, at this point. And there's no opting out for Solaire. Solaire's just going to be here for the next couple of years after this season, regardless. And that was the guy the Giants signed to be the DH. So we'll see. He needs to get hot at some point as well. Jacob, great stuff tonight, my man. Really appreciate you. So good. We'll do it again tomorrow. We'll see if the Giants can break this losing streak with Kyle Harrison on the mound against the lefty Blake Walston, and Jordan Hicks and Jordan Montgomery. Battle of Jordans on Wednesday afternoon in Arizona. But we'll talk to you tomorrow night, my man. Good stuff.
Peace and love, brother. Same time tomorrow.
All right. Appreciate it. And who else do we have helping out tonight? Was it Cole tonight?
Cole and then Dave Jenks, as always.
Okay, yeah, Dave Jenks, Overnight Dave. Appreciate him. Cole LaPelt. Appreciate him. For Jacob Violante, I'm John Dickinson. Giants lose 4-2. We will talk to you tomorrow after Giants baseball right here, KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.